We go. Mr. Warner, you there?
I am here. How are you?
Good, good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. Well, my name is Sam Vincent. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to our students. We have been doing this for 4 or 5 years now, where we've
Okay.
tried to reach out to some sports figures. So I have about 60 to 70 kids here. Um, Looking forward to asking you some questions and hear a little bit
Great.
about your life and career.
Okay.
So if you're willing, maybe take 2 or 3 minutes and talk a little bit about your life and career, and then I'm going to let the kids take over
Okay.
and they'll ask away.
Sounds good. You let me know when to go.
You are good to go.
Oh, everybody's ready to go. We're
Yep.
on.
Yep, we're ready.
Awesome. Okay. Well, hello to everyone. Name is Kurt Warner. I know many of you probably know a little bit about um, my NFL career. Ended up playing 12 years in the NFL, but really what my journey signifies or represents to a lot of people is just the idea of perseverance. That my journey was different than most. At least from a football perspective. I like to think that my journey is more like real life for most people. That it's not easy and it doesn't always play out the way that you want it to play out. For me, when I left high school, the goal was to obviously play 4 years of college, get drafted, and have a great NFL career. Ended up going off to college, sitting on the bench for 4 years. Did get a tryout after my fifth year with the Green Bay Packers. Got cut from my first team. Worked in a grocery store. Tried to figure out how I was going to fulfill my dream and make it back to the NFL. Ended up playing arena football, which many of you probably don't even know what that is, but played arena football. Went over to Europe and played before finally getting another opportunity in the NFL. And it was that second time around where I was able to have some great success. Would end up playing in three Super Bowls, winning a couple MVPs in the National Football League. But even my time in the NFL was, it was a bit different. Playing on three different teams and having a bunch of highs and some lows along the way. And so that to me is really what my journey has come to signify is that a lot of people have, their supermarket moment like I did, where they find themselves in a place they don't want to be and they can't figure out how they got there. Um, but that doesn't have to be the end of the story. And for me, the journey is, what taught me so many different things along the way and allowed me to have success when I finally got there. But again, I hope that my story and my journey shares the message with people that there are a lot of different ways to fulfill your dream, that it doesn't just have to look one way or it doesn't just have to play out the way that you always dreamed it in your head. There's lots of ways to get there if you have perseverance and you believe in yourself and you're willing to work and be ready for opportunities. Anything is possible.
All right. Perfect. We're gonna have different kids. Some are football players, a lot of them aren't football players.
Okay.
They'll introduce themselves and I look forward to you interacting with our kids.
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right. So the first person who's going to come up, her name is Kendall. Her dad's actually our football coach at our school.
Okay.
So she's going to ask the first question, and then lots of different kids will come up.
All right.
All right. Perfect. Thanks.
Hello, Mr. Warner.
Hi, kid. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good.
So, my dad talks to me a lot about how I need to stay motivated and persevere, like you said. Um, and my question to you was, how did you stay motivated when things weren't going your like how you planned throughout your career? And did you ever feel like giving up?
Okay. The first thing I'll add to the second part first. There were moments that were tougher than others, and there were moments where I wondered, should I give up? Should I try something else? But what continually brought me back was really a couple things. And the first thing was that I truly believed in who I was and what I was capable of. And we have a saying in our family, never let your circumstances define you. And I think so often in life we find ourselves in a place we don't want to be, And we automatically think that represents who we are. So, for instance, when I found myself in a grocery store, everybody else looked at me and there's like, okay, you should probably give up on your dream to play in the NFL because nobody's ever gone from a grocery store to the NFL. So I don't know why you would think you're going to do that. So it would have been easy for me to go, you're right. I'm working in a grocery store. There's no real path to get to the NFL. I might as well just give up on this and go another direction. But what I truly believed was that I was capable and I was good enough to play. I just needed the right opportunity to show that. So that's really the first part, and where it started with the perseverance is I never stopped believing in what I really thought I was capable of. Now, you have to obviously be realistic. And so there were moments where I wondered, okay, am I deceiving myself? Do I just think I'm better than I actually am? But truly in my heart, I felt like I was capable of doing that. So that's kind of where it started, was that part of it. And then the second thing that kept me going was that I loved it. The beauty of it was that I was chasing something that I truly loved doing, that I was willing to put in the work and the time, and play in arena football and play in Europe because I loved what I was doing. And I think that is such a huge part of the process, is that if you're chasing something you don't really love, it's going to be easier to take days off, or doubt yourself, or even want to give up because it's like, is it really worth it because I don't love it? But with what I believed about myself and the fact that I did truly love what I was doing, those two things meshing really helped me to stay motivated and continue to chase the dream.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You got it.
All right. While the next student's coming up here, can you kind of talk about what it's like to play in the Super Bowl and maybe how the three different Super Bowls differed?
Yeah. It's obviously incredible when, you're in any field and you find yourself at the pinnacle of that field. It's an incredible feeling. It's an incredible moment. Not only just playing in the game, but knowing that you accomplish something that is very rare and very unique. So that part of it was incredible. It's kind of what everybody would expect. Whatever your, best moment is, in life or in your career, that's what playing in the Super Bowl was like. I think the beautiful thing to me about football is that I think it's the ultimate team sport. It really represents so much of what life is that, life isn't an individual sport where you get to do it all by yourself all the time. Football was so much about a group of, individuals coming together, all with unique skill sets and all important to having success. So when you talk about playing in my three Super Bowls, my three Super Bowls that I played in, we won, on the last play of the game. We lost on the last play of the game. And then we lost one with 35 seconds to go in the game, based on, different plays that were made. And so you got to see that team aspect play out. And let me just share a little bit about the first one, because, growing up, I dreamed of playing in the Super Bowl. And I kind of believed that I would play in a Super Bowl and then the ball would be in my hands at the end of the game. And I get to throw the touchdown pass as time, ran off the clock, and we would go celebrate a win, on the last play of the game, throwing the touchdown pass. In my first Super Bowl, I was in a game that was tied up at 16-16 with just about 2 minutes to go. And I was going back out on the field with the ball in my hands. And I'm like, okay, here we go. We're going to, play it out just like it did in my front yard. And we're going to drive down and we're going to kick the game-winning field goal. Or I'm going to throw the game-winning touchdown pass. No time on the clock, and we win. First play of that drive, I threw a touchdown pass. So we scored, and so we took the lead, but there was still about 2 minutes to go in the game. And never before had I had to sit on the sideline and hope my defense would make the play to win the Super Bowl for us. And that is ultimately what happened. The other team drove down, and we had a guy in Mike Jones that made the tackle with no time on the clock on the 1 yard line. So we won the Super Bowl by 1 yard. But the coolest thing to me was how it represented it takes everybody. It takes everybody doing their part to be successful. And that was the beauty of it, is that we got to celebrate together. It was never about one person standing out and one person carrying us to a Super Bowl. It was about everybody coming together and playing their best football in the moment to be successful. And I could look at my other Super Bowls and say the same thing. You do your part offensively, the defense has to do their part, or they do their part, you've got to do your part. Otherwise, you don't have that level of success. And so very fortunate to play in 3 Super Bowls, 3 incredible Super Bowls that came down to the end, but it really signifies it's about, players making big plays in big moments. And that's what separates the best in the world.
All right. We're going to have a student come back up here, ask a
Okay.
question. All right. Anybody? Well,
Hey there, Mr. Warner.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
My question is, what is your welcome to the NFL moment?
My welcome to the NFL moment. I would say there's a couple of them, but the first one just in game is the first interception I threw in my career was to Ray Lewis. One of the greatest players to ever play, obviously, and then having to try to chase him down and make a tackle, which I did not do, but I slowed him down enough that somebody else made the tackle. But that was kind of my moment. My first start in the NFL is, you have those moments where it actually was a really good game for me, but it didn't start so well.
Yeah.
And throwing an interception early in the game to Ray Lewis was kind of like, oh my gosh, here we are, playing against the best in the world, and you've got to play really, really well. And then I'll flip it, because after that game, it was a weird season back in '99. We had our bye the second week of the season. So we played the first game. It was my first start ever. I actually went back to do something with my wife, and I got a call when we were driving down the road that I was named the player of the week in the NFL, my first start in the National Football League. And so that was kind of my other moment, because it had been a long journey to get there. And as I had said earlier to Kendall, I really believed that I could do it. And so in my first start, to be named the player of the week in the NFL was kind of that other moment where it was like, okay, I don't really care what happens from here. I don't know how much longer I'm going to play, but for 1 week, I was the best player in the National Football League. Was kind of my other moment that signified all that hard work had really paid off.
All right. Thank you.
You got it.
Hey, Mr. Warner.
How are you?
Good. Who'd you like throwing to better, Isaac Bruce or Torrey Holt?
They always have to get one of these questions, huh? I was fortunate to play with a lot of great wide receivers. So the question I would have to ask you is, you got to tell me what route I'm throwing, because they were all different and they were all great, but they were different. They were good at different things. And so if you give me a certain scenario, then I can tell you who I would pick.
A go route.
A go route? Go route, I'm probably throwing it to Torrey Holt. But I would probably put both of them on the back burner, and I would probably throw that one to Larry Fitzgerald if you gave me that part of the equation as well, because there was nobody better at catching the go route than Larry.
Yeah. Thank you.
You got it.
Hi, Mr. Warner. I'm Brandon.
How are you?
Doing pretty good. You're known to be very, very vocal about your faith. And just hearing your story, like, you faced a lot of adversity, and you've been tested like very, very, very in depth about that. So how did you remain faithful, despite all of the, I guess, insecurity and struggle and
Yeah.
I guess just not knowing, what
Yeah.
how you're going to end up.
I mean, I think the first part is, when I found my faith, I very quickly realized that it was less about me and more about him.
Mhm.
And so I think that's the first part is to be able to, recognize that God's working through a lot of different things in your life. And it's not just when things are great. So I think that's where it started for me. But I tell you what, I'm a huge fan of the David and Goliath story. And a lot of people will look at my journey and kind of relate it a little bit to that. But I tell you, the part I love about the story was there was a moment where David was talking to the king. And King Saul looked at this little shepherd boy that had never been trained in anything. They just kind of showed up on the battlefield one day and looked at him and said, okay, why do you think that you can defeat this giant? I've got all these trained soldiers here. They're all afraid of this guy because he's enormous and he's won so many battles. Why are you so confident and believe that you can be successful? And David said, well, I've been a shepherd my entire life, and I've been out on the fields and I've had to defend my flock numerous times. When a bear came by, I had to defend my flock. When a wolf came by, I had to defend my flock. When a lion came by, I had to defend my flock. And he's like, every time I've been challenged to defend my flock, I've been successful every single time. And so he's like, why would I expect this to be any different? Yes, the giant may be a little bit bigger, but I trust and believe in how God has prepared me for this moment. And so when you talk about my struggles and those types of things, I think a lot of people looked at me and said, oh, this was a guy that sat on the bench for 4 years and worked in a grocery store and all of this. Whereas I looked at the experiences that I had and said, okay, when I played 1 year in college, I was the player of the year in our conference. When I played in arena football, I went to the champion. I played in Europe. I was the best quarterback in Europe. So what I looked at was completely different than what everybody else saw when they saw me. And so when you talk about your faith and being able to persevere, it was looking at those things and holding on to the right things, because I believe God was showing me, hey, nobody's shown you that you can't do this. Don't buy into just what people might see or what people might recognize you, as opposed to understanding the journey that I've taken you on.
Thank you. Thank
You
you.
got it.
Hi, Mr. Warner.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
I just wanted to ask what it was like whenever you had to step away from football to go work in the grocery store. How hard was that to do?
Yeah, it was really hard because I went from an NFL training camp and got cut from that training camp, and then 2 weeks later I was working in a grocery store. So I was about this close to my dream, and then you go from there to probably as far away from my dream as I've ever been. But you know what the most difficult part was is that nobody had ever done it before. And so when I'm working in a grocery store and I've got this dream of playing in the NFL, there wasn't a path that had been laid out. Like if somebody else had done that, I could go, oh, okay, here's what they did. They did this, and then they took this step, and that's how they got back there. That was the hardest thing for me, is when I started working in a grocery store, I had no idea what the next step was. Where do I go from here? How do I take the first step to get back to where I want to be? And so that was the really hard part of it, is that I was going to have to forge my own path. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what the first step was. And so that was the part that was really, really tough, was just kind of sitting there going, I don't know. I don't know where I go from here. So it was one day at a time. And even in the grocery store, I'm trying to learn and apply different things that I think could ultimately make me successful, and just waiting for a door to open. But that was definitely the hardest part, because I didn't know how to open that door. I didn't know where that opportunity would come from. But fortunately for me, it did come.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
actually have a question. At your time in the NFL, who was your favorite teammate? If you
Oh
had to,
man,
you had to pick.
favorite teammate. That's a great question. Man, I had so many great teammates, but I'm going to go with Larry Fitzgerald. So he was a guy that I played with in Arizona, and it was funny when I got there. I was 33, and he was 21 years old. Different backgrounds, different positions, everything. So a lot of people looked at us and like, okay, this is like an odd couple. But I think that's the beautiful thing about an NFL locker room, is that a lot of people come from a lot of different backgrounds, believe a lot of different things, a lot of different experiences. But you come together for a cause, and you get a chance to meet people, get to know people, understand the similarities you have with people, even though you may not look the same, or you may not have come from the same places, had the same journeys. But he would ultimately, and still to this day, be one of my best friends that that came from, a locker room that I was in.
Do you still talk to him today?
I do. I still talk to him all the time. He still follows my kids, and we still connect. And so, even though again different paths, that connected us in a really special way. And so we are still very connected to today.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank
You
you.
got it.
Hey, my name's Adam. I just want to know what like the biggest moment of your career was.
The biggest moment of my career, yeah, just in terms of accomplishments, I guess there would be two. I mean, it would be first winning the Super Bowl. So, in my first season, I was fortunate to win the Super Bowl in my very first season, and so you couldn't have written the story much better. After the journey that I had, finally get to be a starter, and in that one season to win it all, because it's what we're all chasing when we're you're chasing to play in the NFL. You want to be the best. You want to hold the trophy or get that ring or whatever. So that was one. But the other one was probably kind of the end of my career when I played for Arizona. When I went to Arizona, I think a lot of people felt like best years of my career were over. I was going to Arizona, who was a team that had been the losingest team in the NFL over the last 50 years. So nobody expected the Cardinals to ever do anything and ever have success. And together we were able to play in their first and only Super Bowl. And although we didn't win the game, I've got a friend that always says that he likes to measure a person based on distance traveled, not how high on the mountain they get, but distance traveled. And that was one of my proudest moments, because it was a team that wasn't ever supposed to be successful. I was at a place where I was never supposed to be successful. And together we came 2 minutes from winning the Super Bowl. And so the distance traveled by that team was greater than any team that I had ever been on. And so that was another crowning moment to kind of start my career, having a great season and winning the Super Bowl, and then finishing my career going back to the Super Bowl with a team that wasn't supposed to be there. And those were the kind of two crown jewels seasons of my career.
Thank you.
You got it.
Hey, Mr. Warner, I'm Craig.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, so I know you're talking a little bit about all three Super Bowls and like the experience in each of them. I'm a big Steelers fan, and in Super Bowl 43.
Boo. Okay.
So
no problem. Just playing.
So in Super Bowl 43, when it came down to Santonio Holmes, like back at the end zone, like you being on the sideline because obviously the defense was on the field. Like, what was like going through your mind like when he made that catch?
I mean, you have both sides of it. Obviously, when you're playing on the other side, you're hoping he didn't get his feet in. You're hoping he doesn't catch the ball so you can win the Super Bowl, because, we just had our high moment when I threw the touchdown to Larry to take the lead, and we're running to the sideline and everybody's like, oh my gosh, we just won the Super Bowl. And I'm like, hold on, a lot of time left. And then for that to happen on the other side, it kind of crushes you because you're that close. But I think the other side of it is you appreciate greatness. And having played in the NFL and had some moments like that, I think the bottom line is it's about, great players making great plays in the biggest moments. And, if you go back and watch that play, which I'm sure you have, I mean, just for Big Ben to get that ball in around three defenders, make the perfect throw, and then Santonio to make the catch and tap the toe, like, it was just a great play. And, every Super Bowl is signified by great plays. And so at the end of the day, you tip your hat to guys that make great plays in those moments to win it all. As hard as it was on our sideline, you appreciated that it took a great play by a couple other great players to end up beating you in a Super Bowl.
Thank you.
You got it.
My name is Jack.
Hi, Jack.
I don't know if you watch March Madness or not, but if you do, I was wondering who you got winning it all.
Gotcha. I don't watch much college basketball throughout the year, so I haven't watched a single game yet. But I will watch March Madness, and I will fill out, a bracket. And so here's the thing is, I grew up a Duke Blue Devil fan. And I don't know why that is other than, was it when Christian Laettner and company, and they were good? I don't know what it was about Duke, but I grew up a Duke fan. And so every year, I always leaned towards the Blue Devils in terms of making a run and winning it all. And so I just filled out my bracket, and I've got Duke playing, I want to say against Florida in the championship game. And I'm going to pick the Blue Devils once again to win it all. Who you got?
I have a few different brackets, but my main one I have Florida. So
You got Florida going? Yeah, they're pretty
Yeah.
good. So,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm pulling for my Blue Devils to knock them off.
All right. Thank you.
You got it.
Hey, Mr. Warner.
Hello.
I was just gonna ask you, who did you get hit by the hardest, like on like a sack?
Oh my gosh. My biggest nemesis was Warren Sapp. And so we played against him a number of times, and he was so good that he was my biggest nemesis. Hit me a lot, and he talked a lot. But if you ask me my hardest hit, it actually came in my very last game. I actually threw an interception on a play, and I was going to try to make the tackle. And the guy named Bobby McCray came from my blind side and hit me so hard that I was sore for 2 weeks afterwards. It felt like I had been in a car crash. And even to this day, my kids laugh about it to a degree, because if they look it up on YouTube or they Google it, all they Google is Kurt Warner died. And that particular hit comes up every single time because it felt like everything from my neck down felt like I had been crushed in a car crash. So I was hit hard a lot in my career, but that final hit from Bobby McCray was probably the hardest.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You got it.
All right, they're organizing who's going to ask the next question. So I'm going to jump
Okay.
in real quick.
All right.
So a few weeks ago, a lot of these kids, we went to the Football Hall of Fame.
Okay.
What does it mean to you that you're in the Football Hall of Fame? What was it like getting that call or finding out that you were a Hall of Famer in Canton?
I mean, it's obviously pretty special because again, when you chase anything in life, or at least me, as I chase different things, I always say I want to be the best version of myself in all the different things that I do, whether that's being a husband or a father, or whether it's doing TV work like I do now, or obviously when I played on the football field. You wanted to be recognized as one of the best. That all the work that you put in and the unique skill set that you had, that people recognize that as being special. Now, I mentioned earlier, it's the ultimate team sport. So it's kind of weird to be recognized individually in a team sport, knowing that it takes everybody to get there. But that's the special part of it, is that you're always trying to separate yourself. You're always trying to be different and to utilize whatever gifts and talents you have on the biggest stage to represent yourself in a unique way. And that's kind of what the Hall of Fame represented to me, is not only what I was able to do, just in terms of throwing a football and having success, but also the journey that went with it. Is, nobody, had ever been in the Arena Football Hall of Fame and the NFL Hall of Fame. Nobody had ever taken the journey that I had taken and didn't start their first game until they were 28 years old and all of that. And then to ultimately take all of that and turn it into a career that would, that would give me a bust in Canton and be recognized as one of the greatest in NFL history. It's pretty humbling, and it's an incredible honor. But I look at it and I use it to kind of signify, once again, that you can accomplish a lot of things and you can find your way to the mountaintop taking a lot of different paths. And mine was as unique as anybody. But to know that bust will always be in Canton and that story will be able to be shared and hopefully inspire other people is a pretty humbling thing.
Real quick before I have few students who are nervous to talk to you, but they want to know where you keep your Super Bowl ring.
Um, Actually, right now it is just in my office. But you never know where it's going to end up. My kids take it sometimes. Cleaning ladies will move it sometimes. But right now it's just in my office. I don't ever wear it. I very seldom ever pull it out. But if you ever come to the house, you can check out a few of the trophies and a few of the rings in my office right now.
Okay. All right. All right. We're going to have some more students come up.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Warner. Nice to meet you.
How are you? You too.
So now that college football is becoming more professional, and we're seeing guys with professional experience having success, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, Deion Sanders getting Travis Hunter a Heisman, and now Mike Vick, Deshaun Jackson, Bill Belichick, all getting
Yep.
jobs as head coaches. Would you want to take a job and take over a program at the highest level?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely things that would be appealing. Like, I love the game. I love to impact people in the game. I would love to coach, passionate about the sport. Being a leader of men or a leader of people, I think it would be an unbelievable challenge to take over a program and be able to help individuals, chase greatness and become the best version of themselves. I say all of that to say I will probably never get into coaching, just because I always say I'm too blessed to coach just from the standpoint of time. My kids and my wife had to sacrifice a lot of things when I was chasing my dream. So I told my wife that unless something changes and she wants me out of the house, this next phase of life is to do things with her, to chase after things with her, and to chase my kids and help them succeed. And so there would be a part that would be extremely intriguing. I've got a son that's just starting his journey as a coach, and so I'll never say never. If he ever asked me to maybe join his staff and come coach with him, I might do that. But for now, I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I don't see myself being on the sidelines of any team in the near future.
Thank you.
You got it.
Hello, Mr. Warner.
Hello.
My name is Caden, and I was wondering, did you ever have any nerves or fears, and how did you deal with those?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I don't know if I ever played a game in my entire career where I wasn't nervous. But the way I always looked at nervousness is that when I was nervous, it meant it was important to me. Like, it signified to me that it meant something when I was going out there, that I wanted to perform well. And so, dealing with it was simply just going out and playing. Is that I wasn't nervous because I wasn't prepared. I wasn't nervous because I didn't think I could be successful. I was just nervous because it was important. And I wanted to make sure that every time I stepped between those lines that I was the best version of myself. And so to me, it was all the work beforehand that allowed me to go out there and, not allow those fears or that nervousness to affect me once I was playing. Because once you get on the field and they blow the whistle and they put a ball in your hands, you forget about all that stuff and you just go back to doing what to do. And so for me, it was about what I did before I got nervous, what I did before I got scared, that would ultimately kind of lead me through those moments. But there were a bunch of times, every time I took a step from one level to the next level, I was always scared, like, do I belong? Am I good enough? Can I succeed at this level? But again, always going back to the training, always going back to the preparation was what helped me to handle those different things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Warner.
Hello.
So I know you, in your career, you're considered a big leader on the field. So what kind of attributes do you think a leader should have, or some advice to be a better leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the first thing I'll say is there's lots of different ways to lead. And I think that's the cool thing, is there's not just one way. You don't have to be loud and boisterous, with how you lead. You don't have to necessarily be the hardest worker, because that's something we hear in our field all the time, is What are we going to get? I'm going to be the hardest worker. Well, everybody can't be the hardest worker. And so, what I've always believed about leadership is two things. First, it has to be authentic. Like you have to figure out who you are and you have to lead that way because it's so easy for people to see through you if you're trying to be something that you're not. So the consistency of that authentic leadership is important. And then I think the second thing about being a leader is you have to earn the respect of the people you're asking to follow you. And the question has to be for all of us, how are you going to earn that respect? What is it about you that's going to allow you to earn the respect of whoever that is, your friend group, your teammates? For me, my kids, how do I get them to respect me? And that's the challenge for all of us is that, for me, when I was playing, I always was going to be the smartest guy in the room. I was going to have the answers. I was going to study harder than anybody else. And so if anybody ever needed to know something, they could come to me and knew that I would give them the answer that could help them be successful. So that was my thing. As a quarterback, we probably didn't work the hardest physically where people could see it. I didn't run the most. I didn't lift the most weights. So you have to figure out ways in which you can lead. And so, that was one thing that I did. Other things that I did is I would meet, other people where they were instead of expecting them to come where I was, and so I would take my offensive linemen out to dinner, when we were playing. And, normally we were different and different cliques in the locker room, but it was about connecting with them where they were. And in doing that, I earned a little bit more of their respect. And so ultimately, when I asked them and told them I needed something, if we're going to get here, I need you to do this. It was so much easier to be able to have them come along because I had earned their respect already. And so it can be different for a lot of different people, but it's finding that way for people to respect you to the point where they're willing to follow you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Mr. Warner.
Hello.
So I was just wondering, so like throughout your high school, college, and I guess even early pro career, like what quarterback did you look up to the most and inspired you, I guess?
Good question. So when I was growing up, I grew up in Iowa, so we didn't have a pro sports team. So I became a Dallas Cowboys fan because they were on TV. Dallas Cowboys were on TV every week. And so you got to know the players. And so they became my team growing up. So at the time, that's your team too?
Yep.
Gotcha. Well, I hate them now. You either love them or hate them. And so I loved them growing up, but now, I don't know. No, I'm just playing with you. So Roger Staubach was their quarterback when I was growing up. And so wanting to be an NFL player and being a Cowboys fan, he was kind of the guy that I looked up to. He was obviously a great quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback, played in numerous Super Bowls. But part of the reason that I looked up to him is because I had heard so many great things about who he was as a person and who he was as a leader and the way he carried himself. And so respected him as a player, loved hearing those things. And then maybe the most fortunate thing is I got a chance to meet Roger a number of times through my journey. And he lived up to the billing in every regard, is that he was a quality individual, carried himself with class, never a guy that was going to get in trouble or do, anything, off the wall. And so he was kind of the guy from a quarterback standpoint that I idolized growing up. And it was cool that I got to meet, one of my heroes, and he was every bit what I thought he would be and more.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just did a project on him actually.
On Roger Staubach?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah? Awesome. Yep. Yeah, he is awesome. He is awesome.
Hey.
You're back.
MJ or LeBron?
Ooh. I'm going MJ. But I also grew up in the MJ era. So just like I said, I was from Iowa, didn't have a pro basketball team either. Closest team was the Chicago Bulls. I watched them play every time out. So I'm going Jordan. Who you got?
LeBron.
You got LeBron. Okay. I'm not arguing. LeBron's awesome.
Yeah. Boom, 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 boom.
Hi, Mr. Warner. I'm Hayden
Hello.
Nesmith.
I was wondering, as a quarterback who's been a Super Bowl champion, what do you think is the most defining trait that separates the average QB and a quarterback that can guide his team to the Super Bowl?
Okay. For me, in talking about the NFL level more than anything else, I think what defines a championship quarterback is their ability to process information. When you're playing the quarterback position, all the things you have to think about and you get to do it in about 4 seconds. The guys that can truly process that, think through it, have an answer for those things, I think is the most important trait to being successful. And then you talked about leading teams to championships. I think it's about those guys that can play their best in the moment. We often talk about players elevating themselves in the biggest moments. I actually don't think it's about elevating yourself. I think it's about the players that are consistent in the biggest pressure moments, right? So the guys that play the same way in minute 1 that they play in minute 60 are the ones that are the best. Whereas there's some guys that will play really good early, and then when the pressure gets on, they don't play their best football. They don't play the same way, and they take a dip down. And so that's the other thing to me is those that have worked hard enough, that have created a consistency where doesn't matter what the situation is, doesn't matter what the pressure is, that they perform at an extremely high level all the time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
You got it.
Hey man, so
How are
you
you?
played in 3 different Super Bowls. I just want to know, like, what was your mindset going into each different one?
The mindset wasn't a whole lot different in any of them. I played on a team that we heavily relied on throwing the football. And so the mindset going in was I knew I was going to have to have a great game. I was going to have to play well. But it was about going out and just trying to figure out, as I was just talking about, how to be the best version of myself. Every defense we played was different. They were going to do some things differently, but it was how do I go and have the best game that I could possibly have in that moment? I didn't want to let my guys down, knowing that they were going to be depending on me because we threw the football. That was my mindset: is how do I get prepared enough that I can play my best football for these 60 minutes and not be the reason that my team loses.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello again.
So when we went to the Hall of Fame for field trip in Canton, they talked a lot about their core values. And I remember at least 2 of them being like perseverance and integrity. And there was a room where your story was presented. And I just wanted to ask you, if someone came to you talking about a struggle, whether that be on the field or off the field, just in life in general, what piece of advice would you give them on handling adversity? Like, how would you tell them to overcome struggle?
It's a great question. It's a heavy question. But it's a great question. And to me, when I went through the struggles, the most important thing was being consistent in who I was every single day. And so, for instance, we'll talk about when I took a job in a grocery store. And I knew that, when you looked at it in the big picture, like anything I learned in a grocery store was probably not going to help me to be a better quarterback, so to speak. How I stock shelves was not the most important thing. But if you've ever worked at a grocery store, I don't know if you have or if anybody there has, stocking shelves, at the end of the night, we had to do something that we called facing the aisle, which meant I had to take all the product in my aisle and pull it to the front of the shelves. And if I had, for instance, soup, I had to turn all the labels to the front. So when you came down that aisle to get your soup, it would be easy for you to read whether it was chicken noodle or tomato or whatever it was. And so we called it facing the aisle. And so at the end of every night, I knew whoever came down the aisle the next day wouldn't care what my aisle looked like. But for me, it was going, okay, this is where I'm at in this moment. Before you leave the store tonight, you're going to have the best faced aisle in the store. Like my mindset was, I am going to be excellent in this moment. I don't want to be here. This is not what I choose to do. I can't wait to get out of here and do something else, but this is where I'm at. And so to me, it was about building a mindset of excellence in everything that I did. And so even though I found myself in, the moments of struggle, it was about being consistent with who I was and how I was going to carry myself and how I was going to do that job on that day. And that to me is how I attacked every struggle that I was involved in. I went back to doing the things that made me who I was and doing that on a daily basis, believing that in carrying that mindset and living through that character and working the way that I've always worked, that ultimately I would work my way out of that struggle and find myself on the other side of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You got it.
All right. So I'll be the last question, and Mr. Vincent said he's going to close it up after.
Okay.
So when you tried out for the Packers, obviously you got cut. If you would have made their team, or made the final cut of the roster, how do you think your career would have turned out being behind a future Hall of Famer like Brett Favre?
It's a great question because so I went to training camp with them in 1994 and I retired in 2009. Okay. Brett Favre did not miss a start in the National Football League from the time I was with him in 94 until the day I retired. He played every Sunday in that period of time. And so it's funny because, for a long period of time, it was like, I didn't want the journey that I had. I would have loved to have made the team with the Packers and all of that stuff. But during that time, after I got cut from the Packers, I played 3 years of arena football and I played in NFL Europe. I played more snaps than any backup quarterback in the history of time in those 3.5, 4 years. And so getting cut from the Packers was probably one of the best things for my career because it took me down a path to play football, experience different things. And so when I got my next chance, I was able to hit the ground running and have success right off the bat. So as a competitor and as a guy that believes he's going to be successful at all times, I still believe I would have found a way, so like Green Bay, Matt Hasselbeck found himself with the Green Bay Packers, was the backup to Brett Favre and would ultimately go on and have a great career and, play in the Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. And so I believe that I would have found a way to be successful. But I also recognize how my journey and getting cut from the Green Bay Packers was also a huge benefit for me in honing my skills and getting me prepared for when I would get my other opportunity. So I don't know if it would have looked just like it looked. I'm glad to have the journey that I had now. But I will say for a lot of that period of time and when I got cut, I didn't want to get cut. I didn't want to go through that. I didn't want to work in a grocery store. I didn't want to play arena football. But ironically, sometimes life works out where one thing that we see as a negative could have ultimately been one of the greatest positives of my career and ultimately catapulted me to where I was able to go.
Thank you.
You got it.
Well, we can't thank you enough. I'm going to ask one last question. The first year I had this class, I had a student who said we should always finish with the person giving one piece of life advice. So to a high school student, whether they're going on to the next grade next year or they're going out in the workforce or college, what's a piece of life advice that you would give?
I love it. Okay. So I'm going to go back to when I was in college. And so when I was in college, as I said, I sat on the bench for 4 years. And there was a period of time where I actually thought I was better than the guy in front of me, just from a talent standpoint. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting on the field. So I had a friend go up and talk to the coaches on my behalf and just ask them, okay, what is Kurt missing that he can't get on the field? And I'll never forget what he told me when he came back into that locker room and shared that the coaches said the reason that I wasn't playing is because I wasn't very good in practice. And my initial reaction was, you got to be kidding me. Like, we're not talking about games and we're not talking about, when the lights are on. We're talking about practice. Like, because I didn't practice very well, even though I may be more talented, you're not going to play me. And so, I kind of left, irritated that was the answer. But the more I got to thinking about it, the more I got to thinking about how in high school, you maybe play 10 or 11 games in a year. In college, we played 12 games. In the NFL, we played 16 games in an entire year. And so what I started to realize was most of my life is lived in practice. And the idea is, who are you going to be in practice? How are you going to show up every day? How do we know that we can trust you with the ball in your hands when the lights are on, one of those 16 Sundays, throughout the year? How do we know that unless we see who you are every day in practice? And so it became one of the things that really shaped the way that I would go about my life moving forward, is always asking myself, what kind of practice player are you? How do you show up every day? What can the people around you expect from you every single day? And so I've been married now for 27 years. And I remember when I got married to my wife, and I thought, okay, the most important thing is get the big moments right. Like, don't miss her birthdays, good anniversary gifts, you'll be fine. And I've learned over this 27 years that those moments are great in my life. My wife loves those moments. But what she really wants to know is who I'm going to be every day, how I'm going to wake up every day, how am I going to love her every day? And I could go the same way with I've got 7 kids, for those that don't know. I've got 7 kids. And I thought the same thing when I was having kids. Okay, get the big moments right. When you have to have those, those lectures that you have to give them, get it right. Or when you got to go to the father-daughter dance, make sure you're there for the father-daughter dance. And I've realized the exact same thing from my kids is they just want to know who you're going to be every day, Dad. I want to know how you're going to love me every day, whether I do something good or something bad, whether it's a good time for you or a bad time. How are you going to show up every single day? So that would be my piece of advice is, what kind of practice player are you? How do you show up every day for school, for work, for your career, for sports, for your friends, for your family? What kind of practice player are you was something that really shaped the way I go about living every single day of my life.
Well, we can't thank you enough for talking to our kids. On a personal note, my dad wanted me to give you a shout out. You led him to a 1999 fantasy football championship.
Oh, all right.
All
right. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us. And we truly, truly appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you. Thanks. Hold on.